Hey, you, if you're out there on the road right now, you know there's a lot coming at you.
Oh, yeah.
Regulations, fuel costs that jump around like crazy, and the constant pressure to keep those wheels turning. It can feel like you're just trying to keep up, right?
It's a complex picture for sure. There are so many different, angles to consider when you look at what's impacting the trucking world right now.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to take a deep dive into some of the big topics, making news, using our sources to get a clearer view of what's happening, and crucially, how it affects you, the men and women behind the wheel.
Right.
Think of this as us helping you connect the dots, just like Hervey from Life. As a trucker always reminds us, let's see these issues from all sides.
Yeah. Our goal isn't just to throw information at you, but to really explore what these developments mean for your daily life, your independence, and your future in this industry. We want to help you identify where you can, take the reins.
Okay, let's jump right into California then, and this law called AB5. It's been a real hot topic, hasn't it? Especially for independent truckers, because it's changing how workers are classified.
Right. The core of AB5 is really about that distinction between an independent contractor and an employee. The law basically aims to classify more workers as employees, which would mean they'd be entitled to benefits and certain labor protections.
And the part that's really shaking things up for a lot of owner-operators is this ABC test. It sounds like a pretty strict set of rules to determine if someone's really an independent contractor.
It is, yeah. The B prong of that test is particularly relevant for truckers. It essentially says that to be an independent contractor, the work you do has to be outside the usual business of the company hiring you.
Which, for a trucking company,
Yeah.
hauling freight is their usual business.
Exactly. So if lease operators don't meet all three parts of this test, they could be reclassified as employees. And that could mean less control over things like which loads you take, when you work,
Hmm.
more oversight, basically.
Yeah, you can see how that would feel like a major shift if you've built your business around being your own boss, setting your own schedule. We've seen reports of owner-operators feeling like this is a real chokehold on their freedom to operate the way they choose.
Mm-hmm. And on the other side, you have labor groups arguing that 85 is essential for ensuring fair treatment for workers. They believe it prevents companies from misclassifying drivers simply to avoid providing benefits and protections. It's a fundamental disagreement, really, about the best way to structure the working relationship in the industry.
The response has been significant, to say the least. We're talking lawsuits from groups like the California Trucking Association, OIDI,
Yeah.
trying to push back against the law.
Right.
Some drivers deciding to leave California altogether to avoid it.
Yeah, we've heard that too.
And trucking companies looking at completely different ways of doing business, like becoming freight brokers instead of directly employing drivers.
And there's even speculation that AB5 could, speed up the adoption of automation as companies look for ways to move freight with fewer employee drivers.
Wow. This really highlights how changes in one area, like state regulations, can have these massive ripple effects. Even if you're not driving in California, if you're hauling freight into or out of the state, AB5 could indirectly affect you.
Absolutely. Through potential changes in how carriers operate and ultimately, possibly even through increased shipping costs for everyone.
So for you out there making a living on the road, all of this uncertainty, it really underscores the importance of thinking about your options and maybe exploring ways to, I don't know, diversify your income streams a bit so you're not solely reliant on the traditional driving model.
It definitely prompts the question, given these external pressures on the industry, what proactive steps can drivers take to build more resilience and control in their professional lives?
That's a key question to keep in mind as we go. Now let's switch gears and talk about something else that consistently hits the bottom line: the cost of diesel fuel. We've seen those familiar spikes again recently. Prices pushing over $5 a gallon in some places. It's a recurring headache, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And what's interesting, or maybe frustrating, is the combination of factors behind this volatility. You've got issues at refineries sometimes, which can limit supply, planned maintenance, unexpected shutdowns.
Right.
Then you have decisions made by oil-producing nations like OPEC to cut production, which also tightens supply globally. And of course, you've got the trading and speculation in the oil markets that can just cause prices to jump around, sometimes quite dramatically.
And it often feels like these price jumps happen overnight, while freight rates,
Well, they struggle to keep up, don't they? You end up feeling like you're working harder just to cover your fuel bill.
oh, the impact on drivers is very real. It just eats into already tight profit margins, increases the need for fuel advances maybe just to get you to the next delivery.
Yeah. and forces constant recalculations of your break-even point. This isn't just a concern for the big fleets anymore. Smaller operators, independent drivers, are feeling this pressure acutely.
It's interesting how different segments of the industry are affected, too. Larger companies often have strategies like fuel hedging, maybe bulk purchasing, that can offer some protection against sudden price increases.
Right, they have a bit more cushion.
But for independent drivers and smaller carriers, those options aren't usually accessible, making them much more vulnerable to these market swings.
That's true. The ability to absorb these costs isn't evenly distributed. However, one positive development, I guess, has been the rise of apps and online tools. They give real-time info on fuel prices at different locations.
Right, helping drivers make smarter choices.
Yeah, allowing drivers to make more informed decisions about where to fill up, maybe save a few cents a gallon, which adds up.
So for you behind the wheel, this means being extra strategic about your fuel planning, really understanding your cost per mile down to the penny,
Gotta know your numbers.
and maybe trying to consolidate trips, batch loads, reduce those empty miles where you're just burning fuel without generating revenue. We've also heard about drivers in online communities sharing intel on the best fuel stops, which seems like a valuable way to work together.
Yeah, definitely. Connecting this back to the idea of self-reliance, in an industry where fuel price volatility is kind of a constant factor, building your own financial cushion and employing smart fuel management strategies becomes incredibly important for long-term sustainability.
Okay, let's tackle another major issue that's been around for a while but doesn't seem to be going away: the driver shortage. The American Trucking Association say we're still short tens of thousands of drivers.
Hmm.
Was it over 85,000?
Yeah, it's a huge number.
And despite the sign-on bonuses being thrown around, the core problem persists.
It's a bit of a puzzle, isn't it? These large recruitment bonuses suggest a high demand for drivers, but they don't seem to be effectively addressing the reasons why drivers are leaving the profession or why younger people aren't choosing it as a long-term career.
So what are those reasons?
Well, the aging workforce and the wave of retirements are definitely a factor. But so is the huge issue of driver burnout.
Absolutely. Our sources highlight that burnout comes from a lot of different angles.
Hmm.
Long and unpredictable hours, stagnant pay when you factor in all the costs and unpaid time, feeling like you're just a number at some of these larger companies, and the sheer volume of regulations you have to navigate.
Right. Drivers often express feeling undervalued, and those bonuses alone don't fix those underlying issues, like the lack of respect at some loading docks or the difficulty in getting home time.
Yeah, seeing family?
Plus, there isn't always a strong incentive for experienced drivers to take the time to train new ones, which kind of perpetuates the problem.
This raises a fundamental question about what motivates people in this profession, doesn't it? It's not just about the immediate paycheck. It's about a sense of autonomy, respect for their time and expertise, and the ability to have a decent quality of life.
Exactly. The industry seems to be heavily focused on attracting new drivers, but perhaps not enough on retaining the experienced ones by addressing these core concerns.
And you see different approaches being taken. Big carriers are still leading on those sign-on bonuses,
Yeah, those are big numbers.
while smaller fleets often try to compete on things like better home time or maybe more personalized relationships with their drivers.
Trying to build that loyalty.
And the younger generation, in general, seems to be prioritizing work-life balance, which can be tough to find in traditional long-haul trucking.
True. And then, looming in the background, is the tech industry's continued development of autonomous trucking technology as a potential, long-term solution or maybe part of the solution.
If we connect this to your own well-being, listening out there, it's crucial to recognize if you're feeling that burnout creeping in.
Yeah.
You're definitely not alone.
Not at all.
Prioritizing your health, both physical and mental, and thinking about what a sustainable career looks like for you, whether that's finding a better fit within trucking or maybe exploring other opportunities, is vital for your long-term prospects.
Well said.
Speaking of regulations, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, they're currently reviewing the electronic logging device, or ELD, mandate. They've extended the review period, and one of the main points of discussion is whether to continue or modify the exemption for trucks with pre-2000 engines.
Ah, yes, the pre-2000 exemption.
This has definitely sparked a lot of debate in the trucking community.
It has, and what's interesting is the range of opinions and concerns. The review is specifically looking at the practicality and safety implications of that exemption. There are arguments about whether older trucks should be held to the same electronic logging standards as newer ones,
Right, given the tech differences.
especially considering advancements in technology that could potentially be retrofitted, maybe.
Hmm.
You also have ongoing feedback from drivers about the reliability and user-friendliness of current ELD systems.
Oh yeah, you hear stories.
And there's discussion about potential flexibility for certain types of operations, like short-haul drivers.
You hear a lot of drivers, particularly those who own and operate older trucks, who really value that pre-2000 exemption. For some, it's about avoiding the cost and complexity of ELDs.
Understandable.
And for others, there's a feeling that paper logs maybe offer more flexibility in managing their hours, realistically. For smaller fleets with tighter margins, the cost of mandated technology can be a significant hurdle.
That's right, and the technology itself isn't without its critics. Many drivers have reported issues with ELD malfunctions, data inaccuracies, and feeling like the devices sometimes prioritize rigid compliance over the practical realities on the road.
Which leads to questions about whether the focus should be solely on electronic monitoring or maybe on fostering a stronger culture of safety through comprehensive training and support.
It's a valid point. Of course, you have the companies that develop and sell ELD technology who are generally in favor of wider adoption. Then you've got the traditionalists who feel like these regulations are overly burdensome. Safety advocates often argue for a level playing field where all drivers are using the same technology for consistency,
Makes sense from their perspective.
while owner-operators are kind of split based on their equipment, their operating style, and how they perceive the impact on their competitiveness.
The industry's response has been varied, with groups like OOIDA actively advocating for a fair and practical review that takes drivers' concerns into account. The FMCSA has reportedly received a large number of comments from drivers sharing their experiences.
Yeah, they're getting an earful, I bet.
So regardless of how this ELD review ultimately plays out, it's a good reminder for you to stay informed about these regulations and understand how they affect your choices regarding your equipment, your routes, and how you manage your on-duty and off-duty time.
It ties back to that idea of being proactive, doesn't it? Understanding the regulatory landscape empowers you to make informed decisions about your business and how you operate within those rules.
Now let's talk about an initiative that's aiming to address driver well-being, or at least trying to. Walmart's pilot Trucker Wellness Hub program. They're setting up these mobile units at some truck stops, offering things like health screenings, healthier food options, even some mental health resources. Sounds promising, but what are drivers' initial thoughts?
Well, there seems to be a mix of reactions, which is understandable, I think. On one hand, the idea of having easier access to health checks and healthier food on the road is definitely something many drivers would welcome.
Sure.
On the other hand, there's some skepticism about whether drivers will realistically have the time to take advantage of these services, given their tight schedules and the pressure to keep moving.
Exactly. Time is such a precious commodity out there. You can have all the resources available, but if you're constantly pushing to meet deadlines, when do you actually get a chance to use them? There's also maybe a question of privacy and whether drivers will feel comfortable using mental health resources offered in that kind of setting. And some have wondered if there's any data collection involved.
Yeah, all valid concerns. You see different perspectives emerging. Drivers who are managing chronic health conditions might find these readily available checks to be really beneficial.
Could be a lifesaver, literally.
Company drivers, especially those whose companies maybe encourage participation, might find it easier to integrate into their routines. But owner-operators, who are often handling everything themselves,
Wearing all the hats.
might prefer more tangible forms of support, like discounts on fuel or, better access to safe parking. And as you mentioned, some view these initiatives with a degree of caution, wondering about the underlying motives, maybe seeing it as a PR move.
It feels like the industry is taking a wait-and-see approach to this pilot program, right? To see if it truly provides valuable support for drivers or if it ends up being more of a symbolic gesture.
Seems that way. Connecting this to your own personal health journey, While these hubs could be a helpful addition to the resources available, it's important to remember that genuine well-being requires addressing the bigger picture, the long hours, the irregular sleep schedules, the challenges of maintaining a healthy lifestyle on the road.
Yeah, the systemic stuff.
It's about consciously making time for your own needs, not just the demands of the job.
Absolutely. Now let's shift to a more encouraging trend. We're seeing a significant increase in the number of women entering the trucking industry, reaching a record high, what was it, 14% of all drivers?
Yeah, around 14%. That's definitely progress worth noting.
It is a positive development. And what's interesting is the combination of factors that seem to be contributing to this growth. More targeted recruitment efforts by trucking companies aimed specifically at women, increased transparency in pay scales maybe,
Yeah.
advancements in truck technology making the job more physically accessible,
Easier to handle the equipment.
and the growing visibility of successful female truckers on social media are all playing a role, it seems.
Yeah, role models are powerful.
It's fantastic to see that shift. However, our sources also point out that simply having more women in the industry doesn't mean that all the challenges have magically disappeared.
Oh, definitely not.
Issues like harassment, the lack of safe and clean restroom facilities at some locations, feelings of isolation on the road, and still having to constantly, prove their capabilities are ongoing concerns.
These are critical points. While the increasing numbers are encouraging, the experience for women in trucking can still be really challenging. You do see a growing number of male allies offering support, which is great.
That's good.
And some companies are making genuine efforts to improve conditions, but there are still outdated attitudes and systemic issues that need serious addressing.
It's interesting to see the varying responses within the industry, from companies actively trying to cultivate a more female-friendly image, sometimes maybe just for show, to the rise of female trainers who can provide invaluable mentorship and support to newcomers.
Yeah, that mentorship piece is huge. This all ties into the broader theme, really, of creating a more respectful and supportive environment for everyone in the trucking industry. A more inclusive and equitable workplace ultimately benefits all drivers, regardless of gender.
Well said. So, as Hermie from Life, as a trucker always advises, we've taken a look at these issues from multiple angles today. And a recurring theme that keeps coming up again and again is the importance for you, the driver, to be proactive about managing your time and building security that goes beyond just driving.
Exactly. Your off-duty time is valuable. It's your time. Utilizing it to learn new skills, explore online income opportunities, perhaps even looking into resources like retirefromtrucking.com and their discussions around things like AI and building online income streams can provide an added layer of financial security and open up possibilities for the future, give you more options.
It's about recognizing that managing your time effectively isn't just about maximizing your earning potential while you're on the road right now, clocking miles,
Right.
but also about investing in your long-term well-being and your future career path,
Right.
whatever that may look like down the road.
And ultimately, it circles back to that core message of respect and support for drivers. Exploring these alternative paths, taking control of your time, it's about empowering you to have more control over your life and your career trajectory on your own terms.
Absolutely. So the trucking industry is facing some significant and, frankly, complex challenges. But by understanding these issues from various perspectives, like we tried to do today, and actively seeking solutions, including smart time management and exploring new skills, you can definitely navigate this evolving landscape with greater stability and a stronger sense of control.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. Considering all the forces at play in the trucking world today, the regulations, the costs, the pressures, how can you best utilize your unique experiences and the resources available to you to build a more secure and fulfilling future? One where you are truly in the driver's seat of your own destiny.
Something to think about. We encourage you to dig deeper into these topics and explore the resources we've mentioned.